You cannot grow if you're always folding yourself up to fit in other people's boxes. That was pretty powerful, right? I'll have to say that again. You can't grow if you're always folding yourself up to fit in other people's boxes. You lose confidence. You lose clarity. You forget what you love because you've been performing what's acceptable. So how do we stop shrinking? Welcome to Get Real with Alexis Jones. On this podcast, we'll dive into real relationships with real people guided by the wisdom and perspective of some of the most seasoned voices in our community, our beloved seniors. Each week, we'll unpack the joys, challenges, and lessons learned about love, family, friendship, and everything in between. This is a space for heartfelt conversations, eye-opening truths, and powerful stories that will inspire and challenge the way you think about relationships. We're keeping it honest, unfiltered, and deeply meaningful. So settle in and let's get ready to get real. Let's jump in. You're here. Welcome to Get Real with Alexis, a place where we talk about real life, real growth, and learning to live out loud, one story at a time. I'm your host, Alexis, and today's episode is a personal one. We're talking about what happens when you make yourself small to please people, to keep the peace, or just to fit in, and how to stop doing that. Because the truth is, shrinking doesn't make others shine brighter. It just makes you disappear. So let's talk about how to step back into your light boldly, joyfully, and unapologetically. I was inspired to talk about this because I thought about a conversation that happened with Emmett Till. And so let me just give you a little bit of context for what led me to this topic tonight. On August 21st, 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till traveled from his hometown in Chicago to visit his cousin in Money, Mississippi. Now, I'm sure you know this horrific story, so today I'm not focusing on that. I'd like to focus on the conversation Emmett had with his mother, Mamie Till Bradley, as she prepared him to leave. Parents always have last words with their children to hopefully avoid danger or to ensure they return home safely. Mrs. Bradley's concern was heightened as well as her worry because her exuberant 14-year-old son, probably without a care in the world at that time, was going to visit his cousins. He was going from the north to the Mississippi Delta, where the culture was very much different than Chicago. To inform Emmett's behavior, by some accounts, Mrs. Bradley told Emmett to make himself small. And you and I know what that means. She was advising her son to avoid bringing attention to himself, particularly around white people. She was advising Emmett to dim his light or to shrink so that people would not notice him or be uncomfortable with him, to keep him safe. This was a standard message with my sons. When they ventured away from my presence, there were always instructions. Any moms out there know what I mean? Always instructions. And usually we said the same thing over again because we needed to remind them. And they'd respond, yeah, Mom. Okay, Mom. I remember, Mom. Okay, Mom, you already told me this. But as a mom, I had one goal in mind and one goal only: come back in one piece. So as they got older and more independent, the instructions became more intense because I wasn't with them. So now I really need you to remember, pay attention and remember what I'm saying to you now, because I won't be there to protect you. There's a saying in our community, I heard it from my mom, from my aunts. They'd say something like, when the child is small, they're on your heels. But when they get older, they're on your heart. I would rather have them on my heels any day. It is so much easier. So today, I want to talk about this notion of making yourself small. Here's a question for you. Have you ever caught yourself shrinking or dimming your light so someone else could feel comfortable? Maybe you downplayed your accomplishments, or you softened your voice, or acted like you didn't care just to keep the peace. We've all done it, making ourselves small to satisfy other people. But here's the truth: shrinking doesn't make others taller, it just makes you disappear. Making yourself small is when you hide parts of who you are, your opinions, your dreams, your accomplishments, your joy, your sadness, or even your anger, because you're afraid of judgment, rejection, loss of opportunities, and yes, maybe sometimes danger. It can look like apologizing for your success, staying silent when you disagree, or pretending to need less than you deserve. I learned this term minimalism several years ago. My son Brandon actually gave me a video about minimalism. Minimalism was about people who lived with less and in less. So very small spaces, which means you got rid of a lot of stuff. Minimalism can be a plus when it comes to getting rid of all that unnecessary stuff. It can really be liberating. I remember downsizing from a house to a condo and having to get rid of a lot of unnecessary clothing and household items. It was difficult to depart with those items, but I'm telling you, I was free. I felt free. And in fact, I started enjoying it so much, I would look for things to get rid of. And I'm still doing that today. However, minimizing yourself is not a plus. It's actually self-defeating. And this is especially true for women, for people of color, or for people raised to, quote unquote, keep the peace. It can become a lifelong habit. You learn to read the room, not to express your truth. So where does this come from? Why do we do this well into our adulthood? Most of us learned this very early. Maybe we grew up with the messages like, don't brag, be humble, or don't make waves. I remember living with my Aunt Isabel. Aunt Isabel was an elementary school teacher in South Georgia, Barnesville, Georgia. That's where my family grew up. My mom's family grew up on a farm. There were 8 girls and 4 boys, and Aunt Isabel was the oldest girl. As I said, she was a school teacher, and I believe I was in the 3rd grade, and I was in her classroom. I lived with her for a while. We walked to school while white students rode the bus. I don't remember a lot of dialogue about that with my aunt or members of my family. And I don't remember the exact words said to us, but we knew not to say anything to the kids as the bus drove by. We just stared at each other. Did we unknowingly transfer this teaching to other areas of our lives? I would say so, at least in many cases. This indoctrination designed to keep us safe seemed to have transferred to all areas well into our adulthood. Many of us mastered shrinking, and we mastered dimming our lights. I even suggest we get confused about what it means to be humble. Humility is an act of strength and confidence that reflects a kind heart. The Bible teaches in Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem or value others better than himself. What does that mean? It means that you should act with humility and consider others' needs and interests to be more important than your own. It's a call, it's a challenge to avoid doing things for personal gain or for showing off, and instead to focus on valuing others, being humble, and looking out for one another. Humility is beautiful, but suppression is not. When humility turns into self-erasure, that's a problem. Before long, we confuse being humble with being invisible. We call it keeping the peace, but really, we're just keeping ourselves trapped. We make ourselves small at work so the boss feels secure. We shrink in relationships so our partners feel needed or to keep the peace. We even tone down our joy so others won't call us too much, or as my niece says, extra. Luke 8:16 teaches us that no one lights a lamp and hides it under a bowl. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've been under a whole salad bowl many times. That verse really woke me up. I realized I'd been dimming my light for people who weren't even looking for it. We also sang a song at church about letting your little light shine. I learned this song years and years ago, probably in Sunday school. And the lyrics go, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And one of the verses starts with, everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I'm so tempted to sing that, but I think you wouldn't, if you heard my voice, you would not want me to sing this song to you. So we were each given a light. What has caused it to dim? What has caused us to make ourselves small, to shrink? So I started practicing unshrinking, speaking up, wearing red. If you know me, I love red. Laughing out loud, saying no without an essay attached, without a dissertation. No just simply means no. When I practice unshrinking, the right people leaned in, because really confidence doesn't scare the right people. It attracts them. The cost of shrinking, your peace, your purpose, and sometimes your health. You cannot grow if you're always folding yourself up to fit in other people's boxes. That was pretty powerful, right? I'll have to say that again. You can't grow if you're always folding yourself up to fit in other people's boxes. You lose confidence. You lose clarity. You forget what you love because you've been performing what's acceptable. So how do we stop shrinking? We start by noticing when you do it. You ask, who am I trying to protect or please right now? You ask yourself that. And then you practice being slightly uncomfortable with your own growth, because whenever you take this challenge to grow, there's some discomfort associated with it, and it's okay. It's just growing pains. It means you're expanding. Surround yourself with people who can handle your fullness. Real friends celebrate your light. They don't ask you to dim it. And remind yourself you are not responsible for other people's insecurities. You are not responsible for other people's insecurities. The only box you need to worry about is your own. Unshrinking isn't about becoming louder. It's about becoming truer or becoming real. You were not made to blend in. You were made to brighten. You can't grow and stay hidden at the same time. You've got to pick one. Unshrinking means showing up, even when your voice still shakes. Remember, you are not too much. You've just been around people who ask for too little. So keep shining. Take the shade off the lamp. Keep growing, and whatever you do, don't ever hide your light under a bowl. We need it. We need you. In a future episode, I want to spend some time with how our shining helps us to allow others to shine as well. But for now, thanks for getting real with me today on Get Real with Alexis. If you laughed, learned a little bit, or just felt a little lighter, please share this episode with someone who needs a dose of truth and encouragement. Remember, life's better when we drop the masks, tell the truth, and show up as our full selves. I'll see you next time on Get Real with Alexis. Thank you for joining me. Take care.